Hey folks, Jenny Mitchell here with Your Next 50. Ladies, we are here to tell you that it's your time. Be intentional with your choices and don't waste even one more day hiding in your stories. You can reclaim your personal power and be happy while doing it. And this podcast will show you how. And this guest will definitely inspire you to do so much more with your life and your intentions. So welcome, everyone. My name's Jenny, and my co-host is
Sylvia, and Jenny. I am so excited for today's show. We are going back into our life archives, let's say, and rejoining with a friend of mine from we always say the past life, but Johanne Pelletier. Welcome,
welcome.
Johanne.
Hello. I'm so excited to be here. Thank you so much for the invitation.
When we were talking, Johanne is part of our, I'm going to, if you're watching us on YouTube here, she's part of the Women Playing Big series. And we like to highlight women who are doing just amazing things. And there's so many of them. And when we were going down our list, Johanne popped into my mind because she, I know her from our life at McGill. We were both working in administration at McGill, and Johanne will talk a little bit about her cheminement and her career path. But she tells amazing stories, like amazing. I went to see her.
No. I want to talk about the boxing.
And she's a boxer.
Let's talk about this
and she's
too.
a judge, a boxing judge. So Johanne, we're botching it up a little bit, baby, but tell us, who are you?
Yeah, thank you so much. So where do we start? There's a story in every part of this introduction. So my name is Johanne Pelletier. I work in communications. I'm delighted to be at Concordia University based in Montreal. But my story is more complicated than that. Indeed, in my 40s, I started to think about what I could do to be more intentional. I wanted to go beyond having something that was 9 to 5, and my work was a very big part of my life back then. But I wanted more. I wanted to be defined by something more than that 9 to 5. And I started to look around and try different things. And that's when I found boxing. It just started as an exercise class. It wasn't anything more than that. And from that, and we can talk about that, it grew and grew and grew over now more than 10 years and led me to being a boxing official. And over the course of that time, I also grew as a storyteller. So somebody who takes my own writing and gets up in front of an audience and shares it with an audience, either live and virtual. And I'm teaching that skill to business startups and entrepreneurs. So, storyteller, boxing judge, middle-aged athlete, communications person. Here I am.
Women, multi-talented. I love it. So you just started to take a boxing class. I've taken a boxing class, and that's when your name came out. I was like, oh, Johanne boxes, because we have a very similar interest, Johanne. I love to tell stories. Our show is based on stories. And here I was doing a Beachbody, Joel Freeman boxing, and I love it. And my son has recently bought a punching bag. But so from a class to officialing.
Well, it a long journey in between. But what I say about the how and why of boxing is I was heading to work on my commute. At the time, I was at McGill, and I would typically be stuck in traffic, usually on the same street every morning. At around the same time, and sitting there stuck in traffic, I looked to my left, and there was a boxing gym. And I looked a little longer every time I got stuck. And I was feeling, I think, a little malaise, a little stuck in my life back then, looking for something new. And so one evening, I just tried a class. Just a class. I had no expectations of it. I had not boxed before. I liked the sport. I always had, but never imagined it would grow. And one class led to another, to a membership, and years of experience in boxing grew to a couple of exhibition fights, to traveling to boxing gyms throughout North America to meet other trainers and write about boxing and train with others. And the reality is, as I get older, I wanted to stay close to the sport. And so being an official, so a boxing ref and a judge, was kind of the next natural step, a way to be certainly safe, but still be very close to the sport. I still train at a boxing gym, but most of my work is in officiating now.
I love
Jenny.
I love the way you listen to your whispers. That really is kind of the way I interpret that story, Joanne. Yeah?
Well, it's certainly a love story. I mean, I think
Yeah.
we've all had those moments where we fall for something based on an instinct
Yeah.
and something that's speaking to us, something we really like. And even if all the signs, certainly my friends in the early days said, "What on earth are you doing in that boxing gym? You're one of only 2 women there." The whole class was guys. And of course, people have a perception that boxing, like other sports, being male dominated would be unfriendly. And it's actually quite the contrary. in the case of
Violent and getting
boxing.
your head
Yeah.
hit and
Well,
bashed and bruised and
well, not at first, at least. The progression is moderate,
Mm.
but I found it to be a really safe space. I found it a space where, because I was committing to it, no one in the gym ever said, "You're middle-aged, why are you here?"
Right.
If anything, I probably questioned myself now and then, and I think as women we do that. We carry these expectations with us. The nice thing about being in that context is I could let go of those expectations and just try it out. I wasn't expecting to be an Olympic fighter. And then I just got better. I got good at it. And with that grew a kind of mastery and interest that has persisted all of these years. And I often say to my boxing colleagues, I want to be the oldest one left in the ring.
Yes. Right.
Like I'm going to carry, and there are some great examples, most often in other cities. I think of Brooklyn, where I've trained, where there's a seniors group of 60, 70, and 80-year-olds who train a certain day of the
And
week.
why not? And why not?
Indeed,
We
why
look
not?
at these
Why
women
not?
and men, running marathons when they're 90 years old, and I lift weights. I love, all of us. I think we're getting to that point where we're realizing how important it is to keep the body, keep it fit, because that will allow us to be that in the boxing ring at 80. And Jenny's a national tennis champion. She won the women's tennis a couple of years ago. And I love lifting. And there's a well-known lifter who's 80 years old in the States, and she's just so strong. So I love that all of us are settling into that.
The thing that's interesting to me about the boxing piece is how, and I'll share this anecdote that I have colleagues, sometimes friends, who say, "I really would love to try boxing. Please take me with you. Can I come with you?" And I'll say, "Absolutely." Particularly if it's a woman, I'll say, "I'll go with you to a beginner class.
Yeah.
And I'll accompany you through in that process." Most often, the result is they discover they really don't like boxing. It's just not for them. And it may be that they don't like intense exercise but what they're usually looking for is they want to find something that they love as much as I love boxing. They're looking for their thing, right? We're all kind of looking for that thing we're going to feel really attached to. And my response is, look, it may not be boxing. I don't know what it is. But if you don't try stuff out, you're not going to find it.
You'll never know.
And when you try it, you're probably going to be terrible at it. Right?
So,
right?
Yeah, I want to pick up on that because I can relate to this. When we're younger, you said something like, I used to say to myself, I'd rather be a half-assed. At the time, I was really having a tough time with piano and performance and the expectations, Joanne. So I often would say, I'd rather be a half-assed artist and love it than deal with the pressures of being a performing classical musician. And there's something to me here, Joanne, where you picked boxing. You chose it and you accepted the fact that it would take time to create mastery. I think often as women, we give up too soon. Do you think that's a truth?
I think as well, it may be true. You're right. It may be more true for women, but I think as adults, we carry the extra pressure of mastery. We're typically good at things, right? We have a lot of life experience. And as you get older, it's rarer for you to suck at something because you don't try new things, right? So of course, when you come to a new thing, you're bound to be impatient. And I see this often in beginners classes, where if I'm training off in the distance, someone will come over from the beginners class and say, how come I want to be as good as you? I want to hit the bag like that. And I said, well, it's 15 years of hitting the bag that
Yes.
got me here, right? But we, of course, want to be really good, and we associate being really good at it with enjoying it.
Mm. As if we can't enjoy it if
Just
we're
enjoy
not
it
just have fun.
for
We talk
what
a
it
lot
is.
about joy, Joanne, and
Mm,
I love that. And why are we not trying new things? It comes down to the conversation about fear, right? Fear of
mhm,
being judged. You could
mm,
have not gone in the ring and be that second woman in your studio for fear of being criticized, right? Oh, look at her. What is she trying to, but no,
Yeah.
you went. And I think that's a great lesson. If you're listening to this and have been wanting to try something, whatever that is, it doesn't have to be in sports. It could be the storytelling, it could be knitting, it could be the
mm.
tennis or lifting, whatever it is. Just
What
try it. Just try
indeed,
it.
indeed, whatever it is. And by the way, when I tell the story, I offer the proviso is it's not that I was so super heroic and never had self-doubt through all this. I've had a ton of self-doubt, right? So, and I think that being able to accept that there are days where you're not going to feel so good about trying this thing out because you're struggling with wanting to be really good
Mm.
and maybe not meeting your own expectations. But that shouldn't be the predominant message. It shouldn't take away. And I'm grateful that it didn't
Yeah.
take away. It didn't stop me from going back.
Yeah. I'm gonna make an analogy that I hope will bring us to how this might apply for the startups that you work with around storytelling, because I imagine they too have a lot of pressure to get it right, and a pressure that or maybe preconceived notions. Can you speak a little bit about how you coach these startups? I'm picturing my stereotype as a younger person, but maybe I'm wrong. Tell us more.
The startups are yes, young, but really all ages, all compositions. They're individuals, they're groups. They're, in my case, very often scientific,
Okay.
academic researchers.
Yeah.
So colleagues who have spent a good portion now of their adult lives being very exacting and very
Mhm.
detailed and very buried in every bit of minutiae that they know. And my work is to have them pivot up and out, to think about saying less with much more impact to generate the interest of an audience. So, and this is in fact how I got into storytelling myself. I was working with some academic researchers at Concordia. I was coaching them on how to give a public talk to a general audience over 7 minutes, a short piece. And they were struggling. Well, why wouldn't they struggle? We're not taught as academics, in the case of my own training, to be both sometimes intelligent and entertaining, a kind of edutainment that's
Mhm.
necessary for these talks.
True.
And so I started going to stand-up shows, to storytelling shows, and I started reading about storytelling, and I found a kind of systematic way in the way that storytellers reveal their stories that seems to work for the audience. But I thought, well, if I'm going to teach this, I should do it myself.
Yeah.
And so I pitched my first story, which was a childhood story about my first confession. And it was a funny story. And I really meant it as a one-off. It wasn't intended as a career pivot at all. And I loved it so much. I loved the experience of the interaction with the audience, of hearing my own story, and of seeing how my story could help others reveal their own stories.
Hmm. Isn't that beautiful?
And so the practice I use, and what I like about my practice is I practice what I'm teaching to my startups, so that I'm able to empathize with them about the nervousness, the
Mm.
difficulty in getting up in front of people to do stuff like this, the self-revelatory things, right? Because
Yeah.
we want to keep things private. I'm asking them to open up a little more about their
Mhm.
stories.
Yeah.
all of it is woven together. And certainly I tell a lot of boxing stories too,
Sure.
as
Sure.
it happens. So that
Yeah.
those two threads in my life
Yeah.
are connected.
I can so relate to working with academics or healthcare or doctors. In my previous life, and I still do a lot of executive coaching for professional fundraisers. And the bless his heart or her heart, that researcher that's obsessed with this tiny microbe on the end of a chromosome, and can get fixated on no, you're not understanding, right? And I often find metaphors are a great example. And I just think that for them to have that opportunity with a peer, you are also an academic, you are at Concordia. I can just imagine how soothing that would be. And the other thing I love about this story is the craft piece. I think sometimes we expect ourselves to be awesome storytellers right away. And that craft element and the pursuit of it rather than the end goal. So it's an evolution, and that I would assume with the pitches, every time you pitch, you get a little better. You get
Well,
to know
just
the
like every
timing,
boxing
right?
match, right, Jenny? And every tennis match, every boxing
Yeah.
match, you have that experience, and then every
It's a
story
muscle.
gets better.
Yeah.
You practice it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right. It's
Yeah.
a muscle. It's a communications muscle
Mhm.
that we're all working. So every time we try it out, it should get stronger. And I'm convinced, and I've seen the results, that the startups who come with a kind of one mindset about how they can deliver their pitch do get it with practice.
Really.
Again, if you're listening to the show, if
Mhm.
you go back to show number 1, people go back, you will notice that Jenny and I,
I've
as
gone
good as
better.
we were, we've sat into it now. We've sunken into we're deeper. It
Yeah.
flows, and but you go back
Yeah.
to it. I mean, I always tell the story with my coaching clients. As a visibility coach, and saying, just start the video. They're so nervous, but I said, just start. Oh, but I could go back to my first video. It's about the perineum, ladies. Jenny, your favorite word. I talk about the perineum. I have thousands of views on that. When I go back, I cringe,
Right.
but it was my first one.
Yeah.
And it just gets better and more at ease, and we get better equipment. Jenny's got a new camera. If you see that she's more in focus now, we can see her face, but the lighting, you just
Bits and
improve with
pieces.
time.
It-
And that's in your coaching business, Joanne, in your boxing, in your storytelling, in your life.
Mhm.
I want to know, were you a performer? Like Jenny and I have been performers since we've been little. Were you a performer growing up?
No,
No.
not though I did. I think I was a musician as a
Mhm.
teenager as well, and I probably was in some high school productions as a chorus girl. I seem to remember,
Oh,
but but no, I
Okay.
would class myself as an introvert. I have often in my career worked in the background. So, and certainly in communications, I'm writing and crafting for others.
yeah.
So the storytelling piece was terrifying to me. I remember that first night at the Phi Center at Montreal with an audience of about 300 people waiting. I heard the MC saying my introduction, and I thought, oh my God, what have I done?
Jeez.
How do I get out of this? Of course, I couldn't. I didn't really want to. And it was a great transition for me. It was a
Sure.
way, I think that I was on the surface, I was trying to learn about storytelling so I could help clients, I could help my colleagues. Really, I was learning about my own voice.
That's beautiful.
I was learning about my own story. And one of the things actually I picked up in the podcast episodes I listened to is how much stories emerge. How you both talk about with women about their stories and how new things get revealed, right? How each of us, is what I love about storytelling. We tell a story and we learn something about
Yep.
ourselves and our journey as we're telling it. Like something new emerges.
That
Oh,
is
yeah.
so cool. What I'm feeling is it's like when I'm with a coach, it's like things, you go to the optometrist and they flick those things and it suddenly becomes clear what the story was really about. I love
Great
that.
analogy. That's exactly it. And I can think of times, I have a few stories that I've told not over and over again to be repetitive, but they become popular stories. And so people will ask me to redo a
Yeah.
story. And I learn something different
Huh.
each time I tell it. There's a new emerging piece of the story, whether it's about myself or a family experience or sometimes boxing. Certainly, boxing always evolves because it's an ongoing story. Right?
But
That
you're no
story,
longer the same person, are you, Joanne, when you tell a story the second time? You're a
you're
different person telling the story. So that
right.
you're honing in on it, you're highlighting a different aspect to
Hmm.
that story, a different part of the story. Which, Jenny,
Exactly.
I find when we talk in our shows, things like, oh my gosh, after the show, we should tape the after conversation of a show and put that on air, Jenny, because that's when our light bulbs go, oh my God, this came up for me. Did that come out? And then Jenny's like,
Yeah.
I do not want to talk about this next,
Yeah.
but
Well,
very interesting.
I
Yeah.
never thought of this till now, but Sylvia and I committed when we started Joanne to this initiative and this platform that we would co-coach each other and we would call each other on our crap and all that good stuff that friends do. And you're just what you said about getting clear. The podcast has evolved and we continue to get clearer on what's most important for us and which subjects need to be highlighted. And I actually hadn't occurred to me until you just spoke that. So thank you for that.
Well, I'm happy to. I must say it's a new point of clarity for me too. I wrote a piece on it's available on my website called the how and why of boxing, because it occurred to me I'm asked so often about why on earth are you like you're in what you do what, right? And I wanted to reveal in this piece that every time I answer this question, the story evolves slightly. I mean, there are some key facts along the way
Yeah.
that remain immutable, but what's great to settle into is that you're still active in your story. In fact, we're all still active in our own stories, right? We assume that at 50 or at 55, oh, the story is ending. The story's wrapping up. Well, why? Why should it?
It's just beginning. It's your next chapter, everybody. You can write the next chapter
Yes.
as you wish it to. And I just love how Joanne, it said there's a before and after kind of, and we all hit that
Yeah.
midlife. And we're saying, what are we, I like what you said at the beginning, I was really profound. I wanted to be known for something else other than my
Yeah.
work. And in our 30s and 40s, we're growing our
Defined.
families and we're being defined by our career choices. And then we get to this other point that we're like, wait a minute, there's more to it than that.
Yeah,
And what
this
is that for us?
it's been a bold awareness for me to really get real about that. And by the way, I've always loved my work. Like my career
Yes.
is
Yeah.
just a deep love and investment in it. And I'm still as engaged in my career, but it was a real revelation to give myself the space to find something else.
And I think we're better employees that way because
Well,
we're
I will,
delving into, we know our I go back,
yeah,
Joanne, when we met 20 years ago, I was so different, right? I was like in my
me
early
too.
30s. My gosh, not
Yeah.
the same person at all. Just and bringing that out. So as leaders leading these teams, I think of young people to allow them to immerse themselves into other things and to bring that out of them, to bring them to these classes. Jenny.
Yeah. I am wondering, so this is a Women Playing Big series, and Joanne, you're here because you have this incredibly rich, diverse life. So I got to ask you, how do you keep all those balls in the air?
Well, I sometimes not as elegantly as others. It's not always seamless. It's not always well balanced,
Okay.
for sure. Um, I don't have kids, so that and if I did, they'd probably be grown. But I have family responsibilities. I have a partner that I'm very committed to. Um, I have found a way to learn about where I need to set boundaries. So I'm not judging boxing matches every night or every weekend. I'm not storytelling all the time. So the pandemic actually brought a whole new world of US based shows to me, so that my work has been featured all over the US in virtual shows. That was great. but I did have to get real with myself and kind of stop at some point, as I did in November, and say, I'm going to take a few months to do some writing. I'm just going to stop, because to tell stories, you've got to have something to tell a story about. I have to write something in the end, right? So I find, in my case, meditation really helps me refocus where my boundaries are getting a little out of whack. It's entirely imperfect, right? I've been trying to get this right for most of my life. I'm not going to proclaim that this is a perfect model. So
Yeah.
I'm not suggesting that everybody go out and take on 4 massive hobbies in order to express themselves big. I didn't expect that boxing would emerge the way it did in my life with that first class. I didn't expect that storytelling would go. I followed these things and I'm growing them because I really like them and I care about them. But I also manage them carefully.
Mm-hmm. And it's that love, going back to doing what we love and doing what we're being called to do, and sitting in that that space, that meditative space, and listening to ourselves. And if there's something, I have been wanting to do an improv class for a long
Fun.
time. So I'm going to go and look that up. That I'm 2022.
That's great fun, actually.
That's
The
fun. Yes.
improv class is really fun, and I do. There's an excellent combination of improv and stories that I do twice a week with a group in the U.S. online, where you get to practice being able to spontaneously tell a story.
Yeah.
Right. Yes.
Based on a prompt. So ironically, the pandemic has brought a lot of great gifts in terms of expanding audience and being able to practice what I love to do.
I just there's a couple of nuggets from this conversation that I'm taking away, Joanne. It's okay to suck at things. I'm taking on that one.
And continue doing them.
Yeah.
Right? Sucking at them and continuing.
Yeah. And the other one I liked was the edutainment. For those of you that are listening that are scientific or academic based, or, our financial investor people, sometimes there's a reluctance to, I don't like the word dumb down, simplify, to make a point, or to pick one point instead of all 5 to make a case. And so I'm taking away that. And you use the words bold awareness. And I am going to take that to heart and think a little bit more on that, because for me, my next 50, we're in a place at 50 where our careers are our careers. Many of our listeners are very ambitious, talented, high profile women. And I think what you've given the gift of today is opening the door into another part of themselves. For you, it was boxing. For me, Joanne, it was tennis, for sure. I love being a tennis player. I have an identity as a tennis player. And if you're listening, what is your identity? I'd love for you to think about that for your next 50.
And what is the story that you want to tell about you? What will be not just that final story, but what is the new emerging story that you want to tell? What is your narrative?
I love this. Joanne, we talked about all your hobbies and whatnot. We always have a question at the very end. What's next? What's your next chapter?
Well, I'm really excited about this next initiative. It's a concept storytelling showcase that will raise awareness around women's cancers, specifically endometrial cancers. And so featuring women telling funny and other kinds of stories about the world of gynecology that we all know well as scientists and researchers joining in with their side of the narrative. And so I hope that will be a show that will launch. I'm working on the production elements of it, and with U.S. partners, U.S. storytellers, and I hope that will emerge in the summer of 2022.
I love that. That is fascinating. I like it. Always doing new things. Look at this. Well, thank you so much, Joanne. It's been a pleasure to delve into these aspects of your life. We could keep talking, as always. Our guests, we could just have them all afternoon. We'll just have...
And if they want to learn more about you, Johanne,
Mm.
I understand your best place to do that is your website. Is that correct?
The website is a great place. It's not a weekly blog by any means, but I do post some writing advice for startups, advice for storytellers, and it's a place where you can connect to some of my stories and
Yes.
listen, watch, subscribe.
And what's
J-
your website?
It's J Pelletier, Pelletier.ca. There it is on the screen.
There, and we'll have it in the show notes for those listening. Thank you, thank you, thank you. I can't wait to hear more about your next initiative and see what you're writing in your next chapter, Johanne.
Thank you so much. Thank you both. Super fun.
Thanks,
thank
Johanne.
you. What's our next chapter next week?
Next chapter next week is Enough with the Blood, Sweat, and Tears. So we're going to be talking about how we make things so difficult for ourselves. It's sort of a takeoff on the Let It Be Easy episode that we had way back when, but with a new slant. And we're going to talk more about that next week. Excited about that. And of course, March 8th, we have a big event happening. What is it, Sylvia?
Well, Jenny, you're up leveling. You're up leveling to the Jenny
joining the club
5.0 edition. Yay! And we're going to be celebrating at our third annual, biannual even, workshop, the Your Next 50 workshop. We're going to be hosting 50 gorgeous, amazing, beautiful, smart, intelligent women. And it is our third one. So, and they are new each time. So if you've been to one before, please come again, because we're going to walk you through exercises like we always like to say, we're onions. We're like onions, and the layers come off, and we just learn more about ourselves.
We don't smell like onions, just in case you're worried.
But like Johanne says, every time we read a story, we're at a different place and we see it differently. So come to the workshop and we will unravel even more. And you can always catch us at a happy hour, the last Thursday of the month at 5 p.m. We're online. You can, if you're anywhere in the world, you can come and join us for a cocktail or a mocktail. And that's what I've got to say, Jenny. Oh, yeah. And if you like the show, if you love these episodes, please, please, please send them to your friends, other women who are playing big, other women who are perhaps stuck at the moment and need some inspiration, and others, family, friends, daughters. It's for all ages.
Absolutely.
And 5-star review. Thank you so much. It really does help.
Yeah. Thanks so much, everyone. I hear we can now make reviews on Spotify too, so that's new. So without further ado, Johanne, again, a big thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, and Sylvia, my bestie, always fun to spend Thursdays. We record on Thursdays. We drop on Wednesdays. Have a great day. Make it a great one, everybody.
Bye, everyone.